بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, we discussed last time the continuing part of al-wudu, and then we mentioned the mubtilat al-wudu or nawaqid al-wudu, things which invalidate one's wudu, and then we also discussed some of the places or times where wudu is obligatory, and those are two places: when you want to pray and when you want to make tawaf around the Kaaba. And then we discussed the places where wudu is a recommended act, and we mentioned like 9 of those places or times. Continuing on today, inshallah, and for those who are following with the document you have online, today will be page 34. And the next topic, the Shaykh brought the next chapter, is Mashu ala al-Khuffain. Al-Mash ala al-Khuffain, wiping over the socks. Now, the word khuf, it denotes, the meaning of it is a leather sock. And that is because the Arabs of that time, or generally in the world, those are the only socks which were known. It was leather socks. They didn't have cotton socks like we have today, or woolen socks. So that is where you find in the translation, the word khuf, it means leather sock. So what mash ala al-khuffain, wiping over the leather sock. Since this is a chapter in Tahara, purification, we discuss it now. So the Shaykh started by saying, Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, and Imam al-Nawawi, for those who you don't know, he is from the 7th century scholars of Islam, from the 7th century. And he was a great Imam in terms of fiqh, especially Shafi'i fiqh. But he was one of those who were balanced. He was not a blind follower. And he was a muhaqqiq, one of the scholars who verified the truth, such that when the hadith are clear, he said, the madhab here is wrong. We follow what the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says. He is famously known for his book, Riyadus Salihin, which is a great book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a lot of blessings in that. And also he made that small compilation, all of us I think we know about, the 40 hadith. 40 hadith, it's a compilation of 40 hadith on different topics, which he himself, he said, whoever goes through these hadith, then he'll have the basics of the religion proper. And other greater books which he did, like the explanation of Sahih Muslim, and the great book Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhadhab, which he did not finish, but it's one of his great works. And other books in the Shafi'i madhab, and some books in the Shafi'i madhab. So Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said in his explanation of Muslim, meaning explanation of Sahih Muslim, those whose sayings are counted, meaning the scholars whose words are accepted. And I'll come back to this point. So just put a mental note on that. He says, those whose words are counted in consensus, meaning in agreement, full agreement, they have agreed that it is permissible to wipe over the socks, the khuf, when on a journey, meaning when you're traveling, or when in residence, meaning you are at the place you're a resident at. Whether it is done for a need, you're sick or whatnot, it's called, or otherwise, even if there's no need, it's not called, you're not sick. To the extent that it is permissible for the woman who stays within her house, the woman who's in her house, meaning there's no needs, it's not like it's called or whatever, she can do it. And at times when the person is not walking about, you're just staying, you're comfortable, you can still do it. All of the scholars whose words are relied, accepted, They have agreed on this. It is only criticized, these are still Imam Nawawi's words, it is only criticized by the Shia to Rafida, that deviant sect, which has become like a separate religion, and the Khawarij, that other deviant sect, what we call today the extremists, those who say they are the only true Muslims, and if you disagree with them, then they can kill you, they can, put a suicide vest in a masjid and blow the masjid up, because they are not Muslims anyway, they are the only Muslims, the Khawarij. He says it is only criticized by the Shia and the Rawafid, and the Rawafid and the Khawarij. These two sects, they oppose this issue of wiping over the sock, and their disagreement is not counted. He says, and their disagreement is not counted. Put another mental note, I'll come to that. He says then, Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he said, Al-Hasan al-Basri is one of the great tabi'un, one of the successors. He learned from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, Al-Hasan al-Basri. He said, 70 of the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated to me that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to wipe on the socks. How many? 70. And then he continues to say, Imam Nawawi, and the best thing that is used as an evidence for the permissibility of wiping is that which Imam Muslim reported, meaning in his Sahih, from Al-A'mash, Sulaiman bin Mihran, from Hammam, who said, Jarir urinated, Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he performed wudu. When he was performing wudu, so we went through the order of wudu. He washed his palms and his wrists. He put water in his mouth and his nose. He flushed it. He washed his face. He washed his hands up until the elbows, both hands, right and left. He wiped over his head. He wiped into his ears. Now it's time to wash the feet. He didn't wash the feet. He didn't take off his socks. He just wiped over the sock. This is your foot. It's covered with a sock. You just wipe on top. So it was said to him, you do this? Like they found it strange. You do this? And he, Jarir, said, yes. I saw Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went to the washroom and then he performed the wudu and then he wiped over his socks just like I did. Al-A'mash says, Ibrahim said, this hadith used to please them because the Islam of Jarir, it used to please them because the Islam of Jarir happened after Surah Ma'idah came down. Surah Ma'idah is where the order of how to do wudu is found. You understand? We read last week, the order of how to do wudu is in Surah Ma'idah. So Surah Ma'idah is clear that you have to do what? Wash your face, wash your hands, wipe over the head, and wash your feet. Right? Imam Nawawi says, the meaning the words of Allah, this verse in Surah Ma'idah, verse number 6, which we read before. He said, so if the Islam of Jarir had come before, meaning if Jarir had become Muslim, before this verse was revealed, it would have been possible that this hadith about wiping over the socks was abrogated by the verse. We talked about abrogation last week or last class. You remember that? But since his Islam was later, then we know for a certain that this hadith is to be acted upon, and it clarifies that the one who is meant in the verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah is not the one who's wearing leather socks. So therefore, the Sunnah explains the Qur'an. And Allah knows best, and those are the end. That is the end of the words of Imam Nawawi. Now there's a few things here to discuss before we get into our topic today. And I'll start here at the bottom. Surah Al-A'mash, he says, Ibrahim used to say, this hadith used to please them. Since the Islam of Jarir came after the verse of Surah Ma'idah had been revealed. Who's them? He says it used to please them. Who's them? Let me make it easier for you. Al-A'mash and Ibrahim, could be Ibrahim al-Taymi, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, or any of them. Where were they located? If any of you knows. These are great tabi'un. These are people who saw the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. No, these are the main students of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. And Abdullah bin Mas'ud, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he went to where? He went to Iraq. Okay? He went to Iraq. Imam Nawawi just mentioned that Ahlul Sunnah all agreed upon wiping over the sock, except two groups, two deviant groups. Who are they? The Shia and the Khawarij. Both these deviant sects, they started from Iraq. Iraq is where all this crazy they came from. And these are the words of the Prophet ﷺ, not my words. You understand? And you have to know something. The scholars of Islam, when they used to say Iraq, when the Prophet ﷺ used to say Iraq, there's two kinds of Iraqs. This is how they understood Islam. Iraq al-Arab, the Iraq of the Arabs, wa Iraq al-Ajam, and the Iraq of the Persians, which is closer, located towards it used to be under the Persian Empire and whatnot. So, he says this hadith used to please them. Not because of these two sects were just starting to appear. They were not firmly established as two deviant sects like they are today. Also because in Iraq is where the people of Ra'i were located. Ahlul Ra'i are the people who put opinions and give it precedence so much over the texts. So you'll find some of them, they'll say this hadith, we should not act on them, or only if you're traveling, or only if you're sick. All those things, Imam Nawawi said no. Do you understand? So this hadith used to amaze them. And more so, those people who try to negate the permissibility of wiping over the sock, they use the verse as their proof. They say the verse in Surah Ma'idah, the order for wudu is clear. Wash your face, wash your hands, wipe over your head, and wash your feet. So how can you say wipe now? Just wipe over the sock. So they say Islam, Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, he became Muslim in the later stages of Islam, the later stages of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So when he became Muslim, this verse had already been revealed. It was affirmed, established. So this shows you what? That even after the verse has been revealed, we said before, we have been saying it so much, what is the job, the duty of the Prophet ﷺ? What is the duty of the Prophet ﷺ? ليبين. لتبين للناس. He was sent to clarify, to explain to the people the message of the Qur'an. So the Qur'an says, wash your feet. That is correct. But the Prophet ﷺ came and taught and explained that if you are wearing your socks, you don't have to take them off. You just wipe over your socks. And if you're not wearing your socks, then the order of washing over your feet stands. Do you understand? So they say because Jarir became Muslim in the later stages, it shows that, and he says, this is what I saw the Prophet ﷺ doing. This is the explanation of the verse. And before that, Al-Hasan al-Basri, we quoted from him, he said what? I met 70, not one, not two, 70 of the companions of Allah's Messenger ﷺ, and they both, all of them affirmed wiping over the socks. So this is something affirmed in the religion of Allah. There's no doubt about it. Is that clear? Is that clear? Tayyib, we're walking backwards now. Imam Nawawi, why did he say it is agreed upon except by the Shia and the Khawarij? Except by the Shia and the Khawarij. For us to understand this point better, that is what you'll find. This issue, you'll find this issue is mentioned in the books of Aqidah. When they clarify, when they teach people the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah, if you read almost any book of Aqidah of the previous Imams, you will find that they mention this point. And we view the permissibility of wiping over the socks. Now someone might ask, or I should ask you, this issue, is it an issue of Aqidah, belief, co-belief, or is it an issue of just ahkam, rulings of Islam, what you call fiqh? Which one is it? No. It's a matter of ahkam, a ruling. Just like how you make wudu. Would it make sense for you to put in the book of Aqidah, if you're writing a book of Aqidah, and this is how we do wudu, we wash our hands, and then you're laughing, it sounds absurd. Why did they put it in the books of Aqidah? Because it has become a sign of the people who follow the right Aqidah. And it has become a sign of the people who are deviant to oppose this matter. So you find some issues of fiqh, ahkam, they put them in the books of Aqidah. Why? Because they've become signposts of Ahl Sunnah. And the people of Bid'ah, the other deviant sects, they reject those issues. So the scholars of Islam put these issues to show that. You'll find the Sunnis, the Ahl Sunnah, they view this issue to be permissible. The people of Bid'ah and innovation, Shia, Rafida, Khawarij, they reject this issue. Do you understand? Now going back to the first and second points I told you to take note of. What does Imam Nawawi say? What is the first point I told you to take note of? Those whose words are counted. And the second mental point? MashaAllah. It's the first chapter, first paragraph. Imam Nawawi began his words by saying what? Those whose sayings are counted. What do you have in your translation? Okay. Those whose opinions are respected. How does that paragraph end? After he said Shia and Khawarij, and then? No, before that. It is only criticized by the Shia and the Khawarij. You don't have that in your translation.
Only the Shia and the Khawarij reject this concept, but their opposing view will not be taken into consideration.
Their opposing view, the Shia and the Khawarij, is not considered. In the beginning, it says those whose opinions and sayings are relied upon and counted and respected. Khwani, you have to understand this issue, very, very important. So that you don't fall into this trap many people are falling into. When someone comes, and he speaks nice words, meaning they sound good, but they are poison lest. They are poison lest. He is a shaitan calling you to the hellfire. And he'll come down to say things, and you find, oh, he's a very good speaker. And he tells you things which the scholars of Islam, whose words are counted, whose words are respected, They don't say that. They say opposite. Those kind of people, don't be fazed. Don't be shaken. Their words are not even to be taken into consideration. Do you understand? Imam Nawawi, like we said, is a 7th century scholar. He's one of the scholars who's well respected across the board. He says these words, not me. Lest someone points the finger and say, oh, you Salafis of today, you are like this and that. No. This has always been the case. There are people who, even if they speak 1,000 words, they're not considered. They're not considered. His words are not considered. So nobody should run after that and say, oh, there's difference of opinion because Sheikh so-and-so said. No. Sheikh so-and-so, his words are not considered. He's not from those people who are respected, who speak the truth. Leave him alone. And his disagreement is not counted. Do you understand? This is very important. It is very important. There are people whose words are to be taken. There are people whose words are not considered. Why? Because one main reason. Why are their words not considered? Because they are people whose foundations, the foundations of their deen is not the foundation which was left by the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. They are not following the way of the Salafus Salih. The way they understand the deen is how they want to understand it. Those people, their words are not considered. Simple, they're not considered. And their opposition to what the Salaf, the Muslims of before, they said, their opposition is not to be counted. Leave them alone. If you understand this, you'll save yourself from a lot of headaches. You understand my point? All these so-called speakers who spring about today, and they speak things like the Prophet ﷺ said, there'll come people who will tell you things which you and your fathers never heard of. فَإِيَّاكُمْ وَإِيَّاهُمْ. So beware of them. It means because he has 1 million followers on Facebook does not make him the truth, or he speaks the truth. There are people whose words are considered, and there are people whose words are to be left off. What is the scale? Because I like him, because I don't like him? No. The scale is, what is his foundations? Him as a person. Him, his teachings. What are his foundations? Is it the Kitab, the Book of Allah, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, as understood by the Prophet ﷺ, or is it what my philosophical teachings tell me? Or is it we gotta make Islam easy for people in the 21st century, so let's just say whatever goes, so we can gain favorability with the government and this group and that group? Those people, beware of them. Beware of them. So this is the introduction. About this issue which Imam Nawawi brought, and the Shaykh quoted from Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, and this issue of wiping over the socks. Now this issue, like any other issue in Islam, like any other ibadah, worship, we said this last time, every worship in Islam, it has what? It has what? What is the next chapter or sub-chapter? It has conditions, shurut. Every worship in Islam has what? Shurut, conditions. Every worship. What are the conditions of salah, prayer? Yeah, quickly. Just give me quickly. You're supposed to know this quickly. You have to be Muslim, obviously. Tahara. Next. Intention. Next. Facing the Qibla. Next. Wudu is Tahara. No, Fatiha is part of Salah, not a condition. No, that is part of Salah. No. Those are common, you have to be Muslim, you have to be old enough. No, I don't want those. The timing, very good. These are conditions of Salah. Conditions are issues, prerequisites, requirements, things you have to have before you go into the worship. You understand? Those are what conditions are called. Conditions. Things you have to have before you start this worship. What are the conditions of wudu? No, that's part of wudu. That's part of the wudu. Huh? No, that's part of wudu. Conditions of wudu. That you are clean of any najasa. That's a condition of wudu. Before you start wudu, you have to be clean from any najasa. Any other one? That is the only one. What are the conditions of fasting? Ramadan. Able is on everything in Islam, so I don't want that one. That is in every as a condition of fasting Ramadan. Intention to be Muslim, those are common. You're close, yes. The condition of fasting Ramadan, it has to be Ramadan. Can we fast tomorrow? Can we fast tomorrow? Let's declare. You know, we are the new halal committee, crescent, whatever. And we say tomorrow's Ramadan. You're laughing, right? So the condition of Ramadan is the timing has to be the right timing. What are the conditions of Hajj? Yalla, quickly. Timing, as specific days. Another one? It's the common one. Whenever Hajj is mentioned, it's mentioned after it. وَأَن تَحُجَّ الْبَيْتَ, and then comes what? لِمَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. The condition of Hajj is you're able to go. And that means what? Health-wise or financial-wise, right? That's a condition. Another condition of Hajj? It's not a condition. It's just something good people do. That you ask those people who you wronged them to forgive you before you go. You understand? Those are the conditions of Hajj. And before that, of course, before starting your Hajj, you have to wear the ihram. Whatever comes with ihram. Every ibadah has conditions. Every ibadah has conditions. The things you have to have prerequisites before you start the ibadah. What are the conditions of wiping over the sock? So, to recap, we're discussing today the issue of wiping over the sock. What does it mean? When you're making a wudu, normal wudu, which we just discussed, go back to previous lecture and previous lecture before that. You wash your face, your hands, wipe over your head and your ears. Instead of washing your feet, because now you're wearing socks or shoes for that sake, you don't take them off and wash them. No, you leave on your sock and you just wipe on top of it. What are the conditions for you to be qualified to be able to do that? Everybody has a book. Read from your book. MashaAllah, alhamdulillah, most of you know this, but we're reading from the book. It says, read for me in Arabic, Abdul Fattah, his conditions. يشترط لجواز المسح. It is conditioned for you to be able to be permissible for you to wipe over the sock. And yalbasahuma, that you should have worn those socks before, ala wudu'in, in a state of wudu. For you to be able to wipe over the socks, you should have worn them. When you wear them, you have complete wudu which you do not break. He says, and the proof for that is the hadith from Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiallahu anhu, who said, I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam one night on a journey. So I poured water out for him from the pot to make wudu. So he washed his face and his two arms, and then he wiped over his head. He says, then I reached down to remove his socks for him. That's how much they respected the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he said, what? Da'ahuma, leave them. Because I entered them, meaning I wore them in a state of wudu. So he just wiped over them. He didn't take off his socks. He just wiped over them. So that is the condition. And this hadith is in Sahih Muslim and Bukhari. That is the condition of for you to be able to wipe over the sock. You have to have worn those socks while you're in a state of complete wudu. Does it have to be right after you do wudu? I just make wudu. I have to put the socks now? No. As long as you didn't break your wudu, so let's say example, most of us, you wake up early in the day, You go, you take a bath, or make wudu, you pray Fajr, you have your light breakfast, you're rushing to work, school, whatnot. Huh? You didn't break a wudu. And we discussed last lecture what breaks the wudu. None of those things happen. So you still have your wudu. Now you're getting dressed and you put on your socks. You still have your wudu. And you go off to work. Next time you want to make wudu, have you fulfilled the condition of wiping over the sock? Yes, you fulfilled it. What is the condition? You have to have worn your socks while you're in a state of wudu, and you did that. So next time you make wudu the best way, the right way. When it comes to the feet, though, you don't have to take off the socks. If you want, you can, by the way, but you don't have to. You can just wipe over the socks. Questions at the end, inshallah. Is this part clear? Is this part clear? Nice. The second sub-chapter the Sheikh brought now about this issue. The time period for wiping. So how long can I wipe my socks? Some people, they like their socks. Can sleep in their socks for 3 days. Some people, they don't leave the house for 3 days. They're just at home. It's not like they're running with those socks or it's sweating and no. He just has his socks and he has 2 days without seeing the sun outside. Can he do that? Some people are on a journey. He's a truck driver. He's in that truck for 10 days. Can he continue wiping over the socks? We're not talking about hygiene-wise, oh, you gotta change your socks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, can he put on this, if he has the same socks on, can he do it for 10 days? Maybe someone has one of those medical socks, has problems with his feet, and he's told by the doctor, don't take him off for a month. Can he continue wiping over the sock? What is the time period? The Sheikh, he answered that, he says, from Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu, who said, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam prescribed and laid down 3 days and 3 nights for the traveler. He can wipe over the socks. And 1 day and 1 night for the resident. Me and you, we are in Toronto, this is home, you wipe over 1 day. So 3 days and 3 nights for the traveler, meaning 72 hours, 3 complete days with their nights and days. And 1 day, 1 night, 24 hours for if you're not traveling. That is the duration of wiping over the socks. Next, the place of wiping and its description. So where do I wipe over my socks? He says, the place which it is legislated to wipe is the upper surface of the leather sock. The upper surface, meaning not your sole, meaning not the bottom of your feet where you step on. Okay, not there, the top of your foot. Because of the saying of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and this saying of Ali ibn Abi Talib, everybody has to memorize it because it's a principle of the religion. He said, Ali, لو كان الدين بالرأي, if the religion of Islam was in accordance, and that is not the best translation. What do you have? If the religion of Islam was to be judged by mere opinion, لَكَانَ أَسْفَلِ الْخُفِّ, then the underneath of the sock, it deserves more to be wiped than the top part. Isn't that what is more logical, as we say? Which part is more dirty? The bottom or the top? The bottom. But he said, but I saw Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiping over the upper surface, not the bottom. So this religion, it doesn't just work through what we, small, tiny, feeble, fragile, ignorant human beings, we think what is good. This is worshipping Allah. Allah knows what is good, what is not good. Allah has told us this is what you do, that's what you do. Even if our minds don't know the wisdom behind that. And that is for everything. So if Allah has said pray like this, pray like that, don't ask, but this makes more sense. La. The religion of Allah is clear, straightforward, balanced, easy. Just follow it. Don't let your opinion, your mind, don't make yourself think you're so great, you want to judge Allah's religion. I think we should do it like that. La a'udhu billah. You get it? The next issue. So someone might ask, so what do you mean the top of the foot? I need to show you that? How am I going to show you that? This is a tight position here. Now I'm talking about those on camera, not you. You can see. How are you going to move the camera though? No, just leave it. This is your foot. This is your sole where you step on. And your leg comes up like that, right? This is your leg. You wipe over here. These are your toes. You wipe over here. What is considered wiping? Do I have to start from the toes, the tip of my toes, all the way? No. Whatever is considered wiping is wiping. Just wipe. Wipe. If it's part of it, it's enough. You don't have to wipe the whole foot. If you do it, okay, so enough also. I know there's a lot of questions on this topic. We'll come to that. Next, the Sheikh brought this chapter saying, wiping over the socks and the sandals. Wiping over the socks and the sandals. He says, and just as it is permissible to wipe on the socks, it is also permissible to wipe over normal socks. So not just leather socks. And shoes. Because of the hadith of Mughira ibn Shu'bah, the Prophet ﷺ, he performed wudu and then he wiped over the socks and the sandals. Or shoes. And from Ubayd ibn Jurayj, who said, it was said to Ibn Umar, we have seen you doing something which you do not see anyone else besides you doing. He says, what is it? They said, we've seen you wearing these animal hair sandals, meaning sandals which had animal hair on them, fur, or whatever it is, leather. And he said, I saw Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam wearing them, and he performed wudu in them, and he wiped over them. So it's the same condition. As long as you wore your shoes in a state of wudu, you can wipe over them. Once we have known this, the Sheikh brought this small chapter which answers many questions. What nullifies the wiping? What now makes you're not qualified to wipe over the socks or the shoes anymore? Number one, he says completion of the time period. Because the wiping has a time limit, as we have known. So if you're a traveler, you can't wipe after what? After the third night or third day, you can't wipe. 3 days, 3 nights. If you started from night, it'll be 3 nights, 3 days. It's same thing. Or if you're resident, you can't wipe after 1 day. So automatically now you can't wipe. Number two, from the things which nullify your wiping over the sock, when you go into the state of janaba, and we're going to discuss that soon, like we said. Janaba, again, is the state when you, male or female, you're ritually impure such that you need to take a bath, not just to make wudu. And that is by what? Either sexual intercourse or just penetration of the male part in the female part, or if uh, your semen came out in whatever way, wet dream, masturbation, whatever way it is, you have to take a bath. You're called that you're in a state of janaba. When you get into a state of janaba, you don't just make wudu and wipe over your socks. Why? Because now you need to do what? You need to shower completely. So automatically your time of wiping is done. Because of the hadith of Safwan, who said Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to command us when we were upon a journey that we should not remove our leather socks for 3 days along with their nights, except from janaba. But if you just went to the washroom and you're just sleeping when you wake up, you need just to make wudu. Look at the hadith of Safwan. It says what? He used to command us, don't take off your socks. Number 3, when you remove those socks or those shoes, once you remove them, you can't just put them back on and continue wiping. Once you remove them, the next time you need to make wudu, what do? You have to wash your feet. You get it? You have to wash your feet. Because if he removes them and then wears them again, he'll not have worn them in a state of wudu. Do you understand? Then the Shaykh, he brought a point of benefit. He says, and this will answer many questions also. The completion of the time period, which is what? 1 day, 1 night for the resident, 3 days, 3 nights for the traveler. The completion of this time period, so your 3 days just ended. And also, removing the socks. They nullify the wiping only. So it is not permissible for you to wipe over the socks anymore. But you are still in a state of wudu as long as you did not break your wudu by the things we talked about last lecture. You understand? You didn't understand. The Shaykh is saying, just because your 3 days, 3 nights ended, if you're a traveler, or 1 day, 1 night, it does not mean your wudu also is broken. You have to make wudu. Just because you took off your socks, it does not mean your wudu also is broken. You can still pray. So, I said, we woke up, you made wudu, you prayed fajr, you had your breakfast, you put on your clothes and your socks in a state of wudu. Now you are qualified to do what? To wipe on them, right? You go to work. Just before dhuhr, say it's very hot today. It's very hot. You took off your socks. Time of dhuhr came in. Do you have to make wudu? I didn't say you didn't have wudu. Listen to me again. These are easy questions I pose to you. You made wudu at home. You wore your socks. You went to work. You walked. You said it's hot. Let me take off my socks. You took off your socks. Time of dhuhr came in. Do you have to make wudu? No. You didn't break your wudu. You didn't go to the washroom. Nothing came out. No. You didn't sleep. The things we discussed last time. What breaks the wudu? Taking off your sock does not break the wudu. That is the point. Do you understand? So you can pray. You just took off your socks. You can pray. The second scenario. You put on your socks in a state of wudu. You went to work. Time of dhuhr came. You broke your wudu. So you made wudu and you wiped over the sock. You came back home. Asr came. You wiped over the sock. Maghrib, you wiped over the sock. Isha. Tomorrow, Fajr. You still have your socks on. You get it? You go, you want to pray. Let's say dhuhr now. Second day. Second day. Can you wipe over the socks? No, your 24 hours are done. But you had wudu from Fajr, you didn't break it. Just because that time ended does not mean your wudu is broken. So you can pray, but you can't wipe again. Do you understand? Do you understand? The ending of the time and the taking off of the socks does not invalidate your wudu if you have wudu. If you have wudu. And some of the scholars, they made it easy, because some scholars, they say, yes, if you take them off, your wudu is done because you wiped on the socks, not your feet. No. Let's say this is the example. You made wudu. So I'm going to go pray Isha. You say, before going to Isha, let me go for a haircut. You went to the barbers and you got a haircut. Nice haircut. Can you leave the barbers and just go and pray? Or you have to make wudu? Can you leave and just go pray, or you have to make wudu? Those of you who are here for the last lecture, cutting your hair is one of the things which breaks your wudu? Huh? Okay, same thing then. Cutting your hair and taking off your socks is the same thing. It doesn't break your wudu. If you had wudu, you just go and pray. You understand? Because when you made wudu, you wiped over the hair, right? Right or wrong? So why don't you say, oh, you wiped on that hair, now it is shaved. It's not the hair you have now, so you have to go. Let's see, it's absurd. You're laughing. You get it? Third point. Whoever wears 2 pairs of socks, like myself, because you can't stand the cold, Canadian winter, right? You wear 2 pairs of socks. In a state of wudu, you made wudu, instead of wearing one sock, you wore 2, because it's cold. You work in construction outside. And then, of course, time of Salah came, so you made wudu and then wiped over the sock, which obviously will be the top one, right? You wiped on the top one. When you go back home, you don't need 2 pairs of socks now in the evening. So you take it off. You take off the top one, and the bottom one, it still remains. Now he wants to pray. Can he make wudu and wipe over this sock? Or do we say no? He wiped over the top one, he took off the top one, that's it. The Sheikh, he says, it is permissible for him to complete the time period by wiping over the underneath one. As long as his time period is still there, 1 day, 1 night, if he's a resident, or 3 days, 3 nights if he's a traveler, he can do that. Why? Because he wore both socks in a state of wudu. You understand this one? But some scholars, khuruj min al-khilaf, just to be on the safe side, they say, when you wipe, just pull down the top sock, so you wipe over both of them. So this is your foot, right? And this is your leg up here. Just pull down the top one, so only the bottom one is stuck on your leg up here, and wipe over both of them. That way you'd have wiped over both of them. So even if you take off the top one, you can still wipe over the bottom one because you wiped on it. You get it? Time. Next issue. You made wudu at Fajr, you left home, you put on 1 pair of sock, 1 pair. Okay? 1 pair of sock. Dhuhr came in at work, you had broken your wudu because you had to use the washroom. So you went and made wudu for Dhuhr and you wiped over your sock. When you go back to work, you say, it's really cold, man, I gotta get another pair of sock. Now you put on your 2nd pair of sock after you had wiped over the first one. When the next time of wudu comes, can you just wipe over this 2nd one? The answer is no. Because you did not wear it in a state of wudu. Because then, which time period are you following? The time period of the first sock or the 2nd sock? And if you do that, you can go on perpetually. So the answer is, you don't wipe over the top sock. If you want to make wudu now, you take it off and you wipe over your socks, the first one. And that is the same idea with your shoes, most of us. So it's like this, another situation. You made wudu at home. You have your wudu, alhamdulillah, you put on your sock. Okay? And you're just walking at home, eating breakfast, whatnot. Then you broke your wudu. You say, oh, I gotta go to work, I'll be late. So you put on your shoes, obviously, and you go to work. You understand me? When you get to work, it comes to dhuhr salah, you're making wudu. Can you wipe over your shoes? Can you wipe over your shoes? No. Why can you wipe over your shoes? And you wore them after you broke wudu. You can't wipe over your shoes. So what do you do now? You make wudu properly, and then you take off your shoes and wipe over the socks, not the shoes. But if you had worn the shoes before you broke the wudu, then you can wipe over the shoes. And the shoes will become like the second sock. You get it? Tayyib. Another issue we'll mention here. That's where the Sheikh stopped, but I know there's few issues which we need to mention. When does this time start actually? These 24 hours or so, 1 day, 1 night for the resident, and 3 days, 3 nights for the traveler. When does it start? I'll give you multiple choice. That's what they call it, right? It's been a long time since I was in school. Huh? Double multiple choice? It's for Canadian kids. Spoiled. Open book quiz. What does that mean? Spoon feeding. It's actually difficult for some people. It's more difficult.
Nothing to do with book.
Khair, I won't debate that. When does the time period start? Number one, or choice A, from the time you wear your socks. Choice B, from the first time you break your wudu. Choice C, from the first time you wipe over the socks. And choice D, from the first prayer you pray after wiping. From the first time you wipe over the socks. Any different answer? From the time you wear the socks. To give it a demonstration so people can understand, like we said, you woke up for Fajr, you took your shower, you made wudu, you made wudu for Fajr, you got dressed already, let's say 6 a.m. That's the time we pray Fajr around here. So around 6 a.m. you put on your socks because you're getting ready for work. You gotta leave. You can pray Fajr and leave. So you put on your socks at 6 a.m. and you prayed your Fajr at 6:30 a.m. Then you went to work. You went to work. And at 10 a.m. you broke your wudu, so you had to use the washroom because it's very cold and you had enough coffee. You had to go to the washroom at 10 a.m. You came back to work. Dhuhr came in at 12:30. So 12:30, you made wudu and you wiped over the sock for the first time. You get it? Where does your 1 day, 1 night start? From 6 a.m. when you put on the socks, or 6:30, the first prayer you prayed with the wiped on, or sorry, with the socks on, or 10 a.m. when you first broke your wudu, or 12:30 when you actually first time wiped on these socks. The brother says 6 a.m. because that is when you wore the socks. The Sheikh says that also. The other group says the first time you wiped over the socks. These are two opinions, all of them from the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, but we say the correct opinion is the opinion which says your time period starts from the first time you wipe over the socks. From the first time you wiped over the socks. For our example, it will be 12:30. So you can continue wiping over your socks until 12:30 tomorrow. Not really grace period. That's when it starts. That's when it starts. Is that clear? So to clarify what we have learned already also. So you made wudu, like we said, at 12:30 and you wiped over the socks. You went and prayed dhuhr. You didn't break your wudu, as we know now in winter, dhuhr, asr is right around the corner. Just before asr, you took your break or you got off work. You didn't break your wudu. So you went home and you're taking off everything. You're changing your work clothes and you took off your socks also. Can you now pray asr? We said yes, taking off your sock does not break your wudu. Taking off your socks does not break your wudu. You get it? Nice. Another issue. The issue of wiping. Some people come and say, Sheikh, but I think, it's just good if I wipe both the bottom and the top. I wipe both the bottom and the top. It's better. No, it's not better. Me and you, we cannot know something which is better in this religion, which the Prophet ﷺ did not know. And if we say we can, that is kufr. Because we're saying we are better Muslims than him. Or we have knowledge which he does not have. That is kufr. So just do what he ﷺ taught us to do. Don't say I think it's better now. Just wipe over the top. It's like one time Abdullah bin Umar, he was sitting somewhere, I think this is the Muslim of Ad-Darimi, and there was a young man who sneezed. He sneezed. When sneezing, the man after sneezing, he said, Bismillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Abdullah bin Umar, radiallahu anhu, he looked at him, and he said to him, oh young man, as-salatu ala Rasulillah khair is something good. Something good. But the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us when we sneeze, we say Alhamdulillah. That is what we say. You understand that? Next issue which comes, obviously, is the issue our Hanafi brothers you like to bring up. And I see one of our brothers here. He is asking, what about soft socks? Is it only for leather socks? We just read the words from now in the beginning. He said the scholars, whose words are to be counted, respected, they agree that any kind of socks you wipe on them, as long as it's called a sock, whether it is leather, it is polyester, cotton, wool, anything in between that, yes. And even for the sake of benefit, even some of the Hanafi scholars, the muhaqqiqun, those who are verifying the statements, they said any kind of sock. The Prophet ﷺ did not specify and said only leather socks, no. And this is the opinion of the Jumhur, the majority of the scholars of Islam. The next issue which comes here, what if the socks have holes? What if the socks have holes? Can you still wipe on them? As long as it's wearable and it's considered a sock, you can wipe over it. You get my words? As long as it's wearable, you can actually wear that thing. Not a sock which has more holes than material. That's not a sock. Right? That's not a sock. That's not a sock anymore. Next issue for us. What about the ankle socks? Those socks which don't go up and cover your ankle. Can you wipe over them? The answer is no. The socks which you wipe on are the socks which cover the place of wudu. And the place of wudu I've learned is what? from the tips of your toes up and including the ankles. So the ankle socks, those which don't cover your ankle, you don't wipe on them. Then there's the other ones, they're called what? Short socks. I don't know what they call them. They just go up above the ankle. Those ones you can wipe on them. You got the difference? There's a difference. Ankle socks, they don't go up your ankle. You know those ones, right? You can't wipe on those ones. But there's the short socks which just go above your ankle. You can wipe on those ones. Taib, next issue. Does this apply to men and women? It applies to men and women equally. And we mentioned this before. All of the rulings of Islam, they were sent generally to both males and females, unless specified. And there's nothing which is specified in this area just to say it is for women. Next issue about this topic. Is there something we're leaving off? Nam.
Let's say you made wudu and then you put the socks on in a state of wudu. Then you took them off and you still have your wudu. Later on, you put them on. The second time you're putting them on, it's still with this in a state of wudu. Can you wipe over it after that?
Taib, good question. I just made wudu, like we said at Fajr, and I put on my socks in a state of wudu. And then because you cranked up the heater, it becomes so hot at home, you say, let me take off these socks. You take off your socks. You didn't break your wudu. After an hour, because now you turn down the heater, you feel cold again. Say, where are my socks? So you put on your socks again. Can you wipe on them? No. Once you take off your socks, you can't just put them back on. Even if you're in a state of wudu, you have to redo wudu by washing your feet and then put them back on for you to wipe them. You get it? Others, if it was like that, we'll wipe off our socks forever. You understand it? Yeah, we'll wipe off our socks forever. So for you to put them on and to be able to wipe, you have to redo wudu by washing the feet. Now,
So timing, specific timing for this question. The moment when we take it off.
the moment you take off your socks, you can't just put them back on and wipe on them. That's it. Even if it's for 1 second, you took them off. In fact, if you took one of them off, listen to me carefully. If you took one sock off, then that is considered you have taken off your socks. You can't just put it back on and wipe on both of them again. No. You took off your socks. Do you understand? You took off your socks. Do you understand? This happens a lot. Sometimes, you're sitting there, for those of us who have young ones in the house, and they're trying to get your attention. So they didn't get your attention, so they grab you by the sock. And they grab the sock and they pull it down, and it goes under your ankle. That is considered what? They have taken it off. So you can't just pull back your sock up and say, I'm going to wipe on them. No, they're taken off now. You have to take them off and do wudu. Or if you didn't break your wudu, you can pray, but next time, you don't just wipe on them. You get it? Now.
So, like after 24 hours or traveling, and you still have the wudu, you have to do it again and then put it back on the sock.
No. So we made a wudu here at home. We put on our socks, and we were still in Toronto for around 6 hours, and then we take off on a journey. What is to be considered now? Do we have 24 hours or 72, meaning 3 days, 3 nights? I'll repeat my question. I just made wudu of Fajr, like I said. I put on my socks, right? Dhuhr came, I had broken my wudu, I wiped over my socks. Time of Asr, I took on a journey. How much time do I have now while in my journey? Let's say I'm going to Ottawa. Not just 1 day, 1 night? Very good. Now you're a traveler, you take the ruling of a traveler.
What? This is the question though. So you still have the wudu after the whatever, the 3 days, 3 nights.
you have wudu, you know. So and then bam, you spent that 3 days, 3 nights, and now what? You have to wash your foot to put back on your sock.
You spent 3 days, 3 nights while traveling. You're in travel still, and you have wudu. If you didn't break your wudu, you continue praying as long as you can with your wudu. But once you break your wudu after those 3 days, 3 nights, you have to take them off and do proper wudu. Then you can put them back on and start another 3 days and 3 nights. After 3 days, 3 nights, you have to take them off if you break your wudu. And 3 days, 3 nights, if you didn't break your wudu, you gotta go to the doctor, you know, right? And you wash your feet like that. No.
What are these about the double side? Most of the things that the Sheikh mentions of he approved, except for this double side, those socks and issues. So what is this based on?
It is based on qiyas. Analogy is based on analogy. Because what's the difference between one sock and two socks? You still wore it in a state of wudu. And qiyas is one of those sources of Islamic Sharia and understanding Islamic Sharia. Now, the Prophet ﷺ did not come and teach us every single thing which will happen, because there's things which happen, it's impossible. Some things, they are judged by qiyas, and the Prophet ﷺ, he did qiyas, analogy. If things have the same common factor, common defect, then they take the same ruling. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gave general principles. So the Prophet ﷺ will give an example. He says what? Did the Prophet ﷺ say cocaine is haram, marijuana, weed is haram, meth is haram, mollies are haram? Did the Prophet ﷺ say that? Huh? Did he say that? That didn't even exist. What did he say though? He said, Kullu muskirin haram. Everything which intoxicates is haram. So from that principle, everything which has the same common factor, which is what? Intoxication. It is what? Haram. You understand? Like that. Any other questions on this? Because our time is up. Yes, Sheikh.
While wiping the socks, the hands are wet and the sock can become wet. Is it okay? Because
Very good question. It happens. So I have decided today I'll be wiping over my socks because I'm not taking them off. I made wudu, like I said, Fajr, I put on my socks, I go to work. Dhuhr came, I wiped over my feet. I go out to work again, like we said, you're working in construction, whatnot. It began raining. And to some extent, my feet became wet. So parts of my socks, it happens sometimes. You go to the masjid, you go to the washroom or the place of wudu, you step on that wet spot. See, you all smiling, Everybody hates that. Stepping on that wet spot. And now you have a wet spot in your feet, in your socks. Can you still wipe over your sock? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So you said your hands have to be moist and you wipe over the sock. And that's a good question. So how do you wipe over the socks? Maybe we still have to say this again. You make your wudu, proper wudu. Please go watch the previous lecture and the lecture before. You do everything proper. When it comes to washing the feet after you wipe over your ears, if your hands are still wet, there is wetness on them, just wipe over the sock. That's enough. But if your hands are completely dry, then take some water and moisten your hands, wetten your hands, and wipe over the feet. Don't take a bunch of water, if that is a correct statement to make, and put water over your feet. No, you're not putting water, you're not washing your sock. You're just wiping over the sock. Is that clear? Now, another issue which comes, how do I wipe over them? Do I do the right leg first and then left leg? Can I do the left leg first and then right leg? Or do I have to do both of them simultaneously? Answer me.
You can both at the same time.
I say any.
You say any. You're the correct one. We learned here that tartib is not a must in wudu in terms of right and left. Didn't you learn here? Didn't you learn here, guys? That if you came and one day you washed your left hand first and then your right hand, your wudu is still proper. What matters is how you wash them, not which one you started with. You understand? So if someone started with the left and then right, it's not the best thing to do, because the Prophet ﷺ, he used to do right first and then left, but the wudu is still proper. Now, any more questions on this issue?
So after wiping your ears, if we wash your hand, then we do this one, wiping of that. So at that time, can I just wipe my hand on the pad to make it little dry?
Yes, you can. So the Sheikh says he wiped over his ears and then he took water and his hands become wet. Can you just, brush them off so you have less water, or you just pat them on your clothes so you have less water and then wipe over the socks? Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. Any more questions? Any more questions? Yes.
What if you have if you are going to sleep and you make wudu before you go to sleep, right? And you put on socks with the intention to wipe and touch it. This is allowed.
What if you're going to sleep and you make your wudu, proper wudu, you wash your feet, and then you wear your socks with the intention that when I wake up, I just want to wipe over my socks instead of washing my feet? There's nothing wrong with that. Putting on the socks to wipe on them is not something wrong. It doesn't have to be like we began with Imam Nawawi's words. It doesn't have to be for a specific reason. That's why I said even the woman in her home, if she's wearing her socks, she can do it like that, one day, one night. Tayyib, if there's no more questions, then we will stop here. And we're almost at the end of Kitab al-Tahara, and we should be finishing next week, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. For those who are online, as you know, we're going to take a break, and at 8:30 we will come back online with the book of heart softness from Sahih al-Bukhari. So we're going to turn off the live stream. So at 8:30, just go back to the main page and you'll see the newer live stream.